Hi all, welcome to this, the second and last video in the rural unit, which is going to look at our second case study, which is intensive peasant agriculture in Kerala in India. Now first, a little bit of context. Kerala is in the southwest of India. It's a reasonably flat region, particularly if you're near the coasts. However, as you go inland, it does steepen up and you can climb to up to 2,000 metres, so it can get reasonably high as you move inland. It's a very, very wet region, so we average around about 3,000 millimetres of rain a year. Now, trust me, that's a lot of rain every year. But it is worth noting that it's concentrated in a particular time of year. We see the vast majority of that rain split between June and September, otherwise known as the monsoon season. Now, it's also very near the equator, so it sees high temperatures all year round. Now, what's the kind of land uses that we see in this region? So until recently, very recently, it's been dominated by subsistence agriculture, with rice as the most important crop. Now, subsistence agriculture is agriculture where most of the material that you're actually growing, most of the crops that you're producing them for you to eat. You're not selling them on or anything like that, it's literally to feed your family. Now, the farming in this region is very intensive. Now, what we mean by intensive is that you've got a small area of land that you're going to farm, but a lot of hours go into that area. And this is down in no small part to rice being a very intensive crop to grow. Now, in order to grow rice, you need to flood fields, so you need to divert water into a field. You then also need to figure out a way to keep the water in a field, and the way they do this is by creating small kind of earthen mounds called bunds that run around the perimeter of a field. We need to maintain those. The crop itself needs to be maintained. So there's a lot of hours that go into every kind of field of rice. Now, in the region, we will have some animals. The vast majority of these are draft animals, so it's things like buffalo or oxen, and we're using them for their strength. We're using them to pull ploughs. We're using them to help work around the farm. And anything that we're farming, that we're growing, rearing, specifically to eat, is going to be things like goats. It's quite small animals that are reasonably low maintenance. Now, the area is very low tech. We're talking about, handmade wooden tools, handmade ploughs, stuff like that. We don't have combine harvesters and tractors and things like that we see with any great frequency in this region. But we do see a lot of people. We've got a very high population density, and these people tend to be split amongst a large number of small villages that are concentrated in the region. There's also lots of terrace slopes for flat land, and we do this, so you get literally a slope and you cut a step into it. And you do that so you have a flat surface to farm on, so it's easier. And the soil here is also really fertile. Now, this has helped, one, due to the climate and the area that we're actually talking about geographically, but it's also helped due to the fact that the animals we do have here produce a lot of manure that we can use to fertilise the land. Now, when we start to talk about the main thing that these case studies look at, we're looking at changes. Now, one of the big sets of changes that we've seen in Kerala is the emergence of lots of new types of technology. So, we've got four here that we look at. So, one, large-scale irrigation. So, in order to do this, we literally build a dam across a river, creates a reservoir upstream of the dam, and that provides a nice, stable supply of water all year round. Now, by having that, it lets farmers grow lots of different types of crops, and it allows multiple harvests every year. We've already got the temperatures year round for growing crops. This means we have the water as well. We also see a lot more greenhouses. Now, we say greenhouses, we really mean polytunnels, but this allows a degree of climate control, so we can grow plants year round. And again, we can control the climate to allow us to grow different types of plants, and we can harvest these plants multiple times every year. We see the rise of agrochemicals, so fertilisers, insecticides, pesticides, herbicides, and we use these to grow better crops. We keep pests at bay, we keep diseases at bay. The big downside, the upside, crops produce higher yield, so we get more of what we're trying to farm. But the downside is every single year we need to use more of these chemicals to get the same end result. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword. Now, we've also got biogas plants. Now, these have been around for a long time, but they are getting better, they're getting more efficient, they're getting safer. And what these do is they convert, animal and human waste, manure and human waste, into gas that can be used for heating or lighting. And the big upside of this is they're really, really cheap to run. It's, it's a byproduct that is going to be created anyway, and you're just putting it to good use. Now, one of the big things we see is that we get diversification happening here. The diversification is when we have farming methods changed over a period of time. And India's seen a lot of different kinds of diversification in the recent past. We've seen the emergence of commercial farming, so people growing food purely to sell it. And one of the big reasons why that's happened is the road network in India's got better. So it's meant farmers can grow crops, can grow produce, and can actually get it to different marketplaces where they can make money off of it. A consequence of this, we see more high-priced crops being grown, so different types of vegetables and flowers, etc. And basically it's become more profitable. Farmers can transport this stuff around, hotels buy it, people in Kerala with disposable income buy it, etc. We've seen a drop in the amount of rice being grown, and in no small part this is down to the fact that rice is really, really expensive to grow relative to other things, and when you're selling it on, you can't get a lot of profit out of it. Rice is grown in vast quantities in Southeast Asia, so it is available plentifully. That means the value of it is very low. We also see imports of rice from places like the USA to India, because the US government subsidises the cost of it in the US, so it can be sold overseas extremely cheaply. So this drives down the price of rice, making it less appealing to grow. We also see a big reduction in the amount of organic farming, and largely this is due to we've got more agrochemicals becoming available in India, so it makes organic farming less and less appealing. Now, we do see the emergence of biofuels in India. Now, they are still an environmentally friendly alternative to petrol and diesel. In India, we make them largely from sugarcane in a plant called Jatropha. Now, there's much less produced in India than what we would see in the USA, and there's a reasonable amount of controversy surrounding the production of biofuels. Now, the pros, it reduces the amount of oil that India has to import. Currently, it has to import a lot of oil, and this brings that volume down. The demand for oil in India is growing up. More factories, more industrialisation, more people in cars. It should see the cost of transportation be reduced. And it should say be reduced in there, but it doesn't. And this can increase the overall standard of living in India. It's less polluting than regular fossil fuels. We spoke about that in the previous video. Jatropha, specifically, can grow in really poor soil. Land that you wouldn't try and grow food on, you can grow Jatropha on. It's very labour intensive, so it helps to create jobs, and it doesn't need processing, and it can be used locally, and it makes communities more self-sufficient. Now, those last 2 points, it's worth stating here because it's not terribly clear on the slide, they are referring very specifically to Jatropha as the source crop for your biofuels. Now, the downside, and for some reason I'm going from the bottom, when produced from Jatropha, Jatropha can be really difficult to process into oil. So basically, you've had to put so much more work into it. The oil you then have to sell, you need to charge more for, and it sometimes isn't economical. And now we're going from the top. Overall, if we grow more food for biofuels, we grow less food for food. That means the food that is grown becomes more expensive, and the poorest in society cannot afford it. So there is an issue around people being starving, and you using land that could grow food to go into vehicles, not people. In the months that Kerala doesn't get a lot of water, sugarcane specifically uses a huge amount of water to grow. So in the months when it's not the monsoon, you can have water shortages because you're putting a lot of the water you have into growing sugarcane. Growth in sugarcane does result in deforestation. You need to clear rainforest to create land to grow it, which is obviously very environmentally damaging. And finally, with sugarcane, again specifically about that, there's very few refineries for it in India. And because we've got so few refineries for it, it makes the overall price of the oil it produces much higher. Now, we've also got a lot of government influence in India. So the government is more involved now than it ever has been. It gives people price support, particularly to sugarcane and jatropha farmers. Grants are provided to encourage farmers to grow jatropha. You should hopefully have seen a couple of reasons in the previous slide why that might be seen as a very good thing. You get grants provided to provide greenhouses, and there's even been TV programmes that have been launched to give information on farming in India. Now, one last bit, just to close this today, GM crops, they're banned in India. The Indian government, another bit of government intervention has been to ban GM crops, but this as a decision is extremely controversial. You do have people arguing, well, hang on a minute here, we have people who are starving, who can't access food, this could increase yields, it could produce more, why don't we encourage it? And then you have other people worrying things like it will create an increased divide in rich and poor farmers, because are you able to buy the GM seeds, etc. So at the moment, currently banned in India, but a very kind of contentious issue. Now, this is going to draw an end to our last video. Our last video here. There will be one small series on population that I'll put up over the Easter holidays, guys. So until then, I'll see you later.